All right. I hope my connection will be working. There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the third episode of our Pulse Community Sessions. Hello, everyone. I apologize for the rather unflattering settings of today. You know, usually I will be speaking to you from the much wider spaces of my living room, but yeah, today it is what it is. So smart working as we go. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Diana. I am Human Rights Pulse Community Manager, and I'm sure some of you might know that already. But yeah, for those of you who do not know and who have just recently subscribed, my role as a community manager has been instrumental in creating these Instagram lives, whose aim really is to bring our community members together in human rights discussions. Then that used to be something close to the community members, and we subsequently decided to open it to the wider public so as to gauge a more varied wealth of contributions and opinions. And yeah, that has proved very, very successful. So please do feel free to interact with me at any time and with our guests, of course. Tap in all your questions. I will try to make sure to address as many of them as possible. But yeah, as you might know, due to time constraints and all that, if I do not get to answer your question, please do not take that, take no offense. Sometimes as the question flash by on the screen, I do not even get to read what you're saying. So really, it is nothing personal. So just for you to know that. But yeah, enough of the housekeeping, how they like to use this word. I'm sure that today's topic will thrill many of you, and especially the young students that might listen to us, or who knows, maybe even some well-seasoned lawyers who might perhaps decide to make a career switch. Because indeed today we are talking about how to successfully transition from practicing in commercial law to a career which is fully devoted to human rights. And I will invite now our wonderful guest, Rosie, who will talk to you about that. Now, bear with me just 1 second because I need to make the technology work. So let me see. Now, Rosie should be able to in a few seconds. Just waiting for her to join. Oh, there you go. Hi, Rosie.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. I was just saying, I feel so bad. Usually, like these angles and those lights, usually I would have a desk and stuff. But yeah, smart working is what it is. So yeah, we will make that work. Right. So Rosie, I was just saying that today we're going to speak about how to successfully transition from commercial law to human rights law. And let me introduce Rosie to you. So Rosie used to work as a fully qualified solicitor and barrister in a commercial law firm in Auckland, New Zealand, where she's from. Now, due to her career switch, she had to give up that practicing certificate, but not to worry, she's able to redeem that whenever she wants, if she so wishes. Besides the fact that she's an outstanding student that has consistently been in the top 10% of her class and has won several prizes and awards, she has recently graduated from a very prestigious and selective master in international criminal law from the University of Amsterdam, jointly with Columbia University. And her work was very interesting because she focused on sexual and gender-based violence and humanitarian law in the context of the Columbia University law clinics. And that was for the academic part. Then as for the work experience that she has, as we said, she has practiced, of course, in this commercial law firm, but she has worked consistently for not-for-profit organizations. Rosie, I think your connection went down, or maybe is it me? Oh, I'm not able to see Rosie. Okay, now it's good. So yeah, I was saying she has a wealth of experience with not-for-profit organizations, and she advises on topics such as victims' justice and transitional justice, once again pertaining to sexual or gender-based violence. she produces research, for example, on climate change as well. And most interestingly, she has worked in the extraordinary chambers to the courts of Cambodia, to the courts of Cambodia in the trial of Ao An, who was the fourth Khmer Rouge leader that is accused of genocide. So some very interesting international law research that she did there. So yeah, Rosie, I guess I will just kick off this discussion and ask you what drew you initially to a legal career, and what is your personal drive? What has been this personal drive throughout the years to to be here where you are?
Well, firstly, that was a way too kind introduction.
That's true, though. That's true. You're impressive. So that's absolutely it. Oh no, we cannot see Rosie. Or is it just me? Rosie, I'm afraid we cannot see you. Let me just type in. Oh no, we lost Rosie for a moment here. Let's see if we manage to get her back. I'm sure we can manage that. Let me see. Let's invite her again. There you go. She should be now able to join again. This is those are the perks of going live, as they say, right? I really hope that now my parents aren't just joining and bumping. So okay,
I'm
here we have
so
you
sorry.
again.
My phone just overheated, which it's never done before, but I think we're okay. So what was your first question? Sorry.
So no, yeah, I was just asking what drew you initially to a legal career, and what's your personal drive really to just be in this field?
Yeah, so I'm from New Zealand, as you said, where we're really fortunate that we have a really good human rights record, and we're comparatively a really peaceful country. And in some ways, that has made me want to seek out this career more, because I'm aware that it's just pure luck to come from a peaceful country than a place of conflict. And I feel like I have an obligation as someone who's had that privilege and a really good education to apply my time and my effort to people who don't have that privilege, and who can't advocate for themselves but are entitled to exactly the same human rights as I am. So I guess my personal drive is that I find it hard to know about things that are happening and not do something about it. And I think that's one of the great things about HRP is that we see hundreds of articles coming in each week from people right around the world who are observing these violations of human rights that occur, and they're speaking out about it, because it's making quite a tangible difference to people's lives. And I think the first step to being complicit is pleading ignorance. So that's why HRP is really important, because the more people who we can get behind this, the more power we have.
Oh, absolutely. I was just gonna say, indeed, sometimes I have discussion with either people from the Human Rights Pulse or my mates and other people in general, my parents, and it's so hard coming from privilege to be talking about human rights. I sometimes feel as a hypocrite because we come from peaceful countries, but of course, having privilege is not our fault, and it's so important to actually be putting those issues on the agenda and to be talking about that. And I absolutely think that Human Rights Pulse is doing amazing in actually making that tangible a difference that you were hinting at. So yeah, absolutely. I guess the second question would then be from a more structural perspective. Could you walk us through the actual steps that led you to obtaining your practicing solicitor certificate? How was it to work in a commercial law firm? And I guess most importantly, what happened that made you decide, okay, I now know what it means to be working in a commercial law firm. I want to have a career fully devoted to human rights law from now on.
Yeah, so that's probably quite a simple answer. I was admitted to the New Zealand bar, which is something that kind of everyone does once you finish law school. And it takes about a year after getting admitted to do that. I had always wanted to do human rights, to answer your second question, but I was advised to go and get some private practice under my belt, which was a really good thing to do. And I at the same time as working as a lawyer, I did some work for the Red Cross Refugee Resettlement, which was a really good idea because it kind of kept one foot in the humanitarian field as well as the private field. But I would say that human rights and corporate law don't have to be mutually exclusive. There's a really growing field of corporate due diligence, and especially as a marketing strategy as well, human rights is kind of in fashion at the moment. So people need to, corporations and big brands are going to need people who can traverse both human rights and corporate law. And then what made the switch was also fairly simple. I got into a really good master's course, and I knew that I had to go and do it. Being from New Zealand is a real privilege, but it's also relatively opaque in terms of how you're going to be able to join the field. So I think anyone in a similar position should do a master's in one of the areas of human rights or humanitarian law, and then everything just kind of becomes more clear from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. The first thing that you said, I totally agree with you with the fact that corporate due diligence and business and human rights is really a growing practice at the moment, something that also interests me personally. And actually, I'm very, very happy that we're having this conversation because I got my training contract in a commercial law firm as well. So I'm really interested to see how my career will develop from that in terms of, me being a keen human rights advocate, but then having that commercial aspect to my career. But yeah, so you mentioned your master's. I'm sure that people would love to know everything about it. I personally know that master, and I know that, as I said, is very, very prestigious, very selective, and very interesting in terms of the actual work that you get to do, especially considering the fact that it's University of Amsterdam and Columbia University. So I guess just tell us everything about it and your thesis and your work that you did there.
Yeah, so I did the Masters of International Criminal Law, the joint program between Columbia University and the University of Amsterdam, and they just take 8 people, and you do the first semester in Amsterdam, and that's pretty heavily focused on international criminal law given the proximity to the court, and then Columbia University, you have a lot more freedom, so I focused on humanitarian law and the law of genocide. So my thesis research focused on victims of sexual and gender-based violence. I looked into the sociological roots of sexual violence and examined the gendered norms and the often patriarchal controls that engender this kind of violence, and allow it to be a really effective and a really devastating tool in conflicts and in wars. So I used this to assess the ICC's institutional capabilities to deliver the kind of justice response that can heal these victims and uplift and transform the societies that have perpetuated them. And that's in light of the court's own stated commitment to sexual violence and restorative ideals. And it also uses victims as a real legitimating discourse. So that was my motivation for that.
Yeah, I guess that, you mentioned the ICC, and the legitimacy question is something that I always think about, especially with the ad hoc tribunals or international tribunals, the fact that you actually use victims, the victim experience as a legitimation in itself, so as to promote the work of the courts, I think is very important. We certainly could talk about the legitimacy of the courts for hours, but yeah, this is not really the session for that. So yeah, this ties in very nicely. So the whole discourse about victims, transitional justice, and ad hoc tribunals with your extraordinary work at the Cambodian courts. So I guess you could talk us through your research. Well, actually, no research. You were analyzing evidence for the Khmer Rouge trials, weren't you?
Yeah, that was one of the things I did, but I did do some research that came out of it as well. Yeah, so I went to Cambodia in 2016. You made it sound amazing, but it was only for a couple of months. Yeah, that was a really formative experience in terms of what we were just talking about, because while the court does really, really important work, I realized that I'm a lot more driven by direct victims work, and international criminal law is definitely moving in that direction, kind of towards being there for victims, but it's primarily about retribution for the accused, and the perceived benefits of it are pretty incidental to that. So in Cambodia, where there's so much poverty and corruption, of which, you know, a lot of it can be directly traced to the Khmer Rouge regime, I began to kind of question just about the various definitions of justice, right? So how the justice sought inside the courtroom is actually a very Western definition of that, and justice for the Cambodian victims in Kampong Cham might be quite different. So, you know, the economic or material support, getting financial autonomy and prosperity, or reconciliation according to Buddhist practices, that could have been even more powerful and cost effective. That's not to say that there are things wrong with the courts. I think that criminal retribution is absolutely necessary part of any justice response, and, you know, we need these international standards, but it comes down to whose justice you're seeking and whose justice you prioritize and fund. And I think that as far as is realistically possible, and I know that I'm talking idealistically here, but the justice that the international community seeks and puts money into should be what the victims of the crimes want and need.
I absolutely agree with that. And this is, I guess, a wider, a double-edged sword of international law at large. So not only the legitimacy question that I was talking before, but yeah, who are we actually protecting? Where are we investing the money? Because then, of course, it all comes down to actual fundings, and the economy is something that we cannot abstract from. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And too often we end up with, so for example, in Sri Lanka, we had actually our very first poll session that was not open to the public was about transitional justice in Sri Lanka. And we were talking about this fact of the government wanting to deliver justice that the victims did not want. And they were actually causing more harm to the victims themselves by, but at the same time, they were preaching themselves as, oh, we are the do-gooders and we are doing everything we can for the victims, while the victims were saying, no, you aren't. This is not what we want. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
I think you can get into a whole bunch of neo-colonialist arguments in terms of when it comes into what these institutions are trying to do, but I kind of refrain from going into those arguments because they're a bit too critical for me, but they definitely exist, and I mean, they've got some really good points behind them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And then, yeah, very last remark, because I always get very, like, this topic interests me very much, but yeah, it's like with the UN, is the whole discourse about saying, yeah, is the UN actually doing good? Do we need now the UN? And the answer to me personally is, of course, yes, but there's always that problem of, yeah, we are trying to do good. We are trying to establish an international community that has very high standards in terms of this justice that we want to bring. But what are we actually doing if we really go and see, especially in terms of post-war, neo-colonial, and all that discourse? But yeah, let's just set this aside, because as I said, we could talk about it for hours. Yeah, so I guess actually I'm asking you a personal personal question here. So I know you did, you had this Cambodian experience that was in Cambodia. So you traveled there all the way, you were there, you were staying there. But then you also have a lot of experience with not-for-profit organizations and working remotely. So how does that work? How do you feel in working remotely for many organizations? Which one do you prefer? And yeah, how do you find your work in that respect?
Yeah, so I mean, that's an interesting question because this year, because of coronavirus, remote work has kind of been the only possible work we can do.
Yeah.
So I spent 6 months in New Zealand this year. I had to come home from New York because of COVID. But it was such a great experience because I ended up being able to work for a couple of different incredible organizations, which are in different places over the world. So I worked in the Sudan context on a couple of different international law issues there. And then I was also working to India on detention issues and persecution. And then I also was doing some freelance sexual violence cases. So it was actually amazing because I got so much more diversity in the experience than I would have otherwise. And I guess it just proves that remote work is possible. I know that it's a lot better to have boots on the ground and be able to actually be where you're trying to make a change, but it just shows that it is definitely possible. And there are so many NGOs out there that really do need help.
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree. It's like this whole COVID situation. Of course, we're talking about a disaster, and it's not pleasant for anyone, nor the sick, nor those who are actually still good in our warm beds and having work. But it shows just how flexible, how flexible the entire community can be in all sort of aspects. So from work that then becomes deployed on a digital space, and it also shows the fact that yeah, we still do need people who might want to volunteer and bring things further. I was also very pleasantly surprised this year by the sheer amount of work that I got, because I thought, there were people losing jobs, and I was absolutely submerged of things to do. And of course, I was very happy and very grateful for that. But yeah, as you said, it's nice to be able to have that possibility to be working remotely. Now I know you're in Geneva, and I know you only just started your work there. So, of course, maybe you might not have that many insights about, the experience, because you still have to start. But where do you see your career going? And what are these are classic questions. What are your plans for the future? Where do you see yourself in 5 years or so? But yeah, I guess that is my question.
Yeah, that's a magic question. Yeah, I'm excited about this next chapter here in Geneva. I think it's a really great place to be. But I don't think there's too much benefit to having too much of a rigid plan, because it'll just never work out as you think it does. I also want to stay open to opportunities of places that are doing good things and making good difference. So I don't want to plan too much and just kind of go by that yardstick. But yeah, that's my very loose plan.
No, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I couldn't agree more with the fact that you cannot plan in. I mean, as much as you might want to be planning in advance, because we like to have that security as human beings of, I want to know exactly from now where I will be in 5 years. That's simply not how life works. And especially in the legal field, I think this is very, very important. This is what I will be telling myself, the me from 5 years ago. Just go out there and experience as much law as you can in as many law firms or charities or whatever, so as to realize what we actually want to do, where we are, where our strengths lie, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you in that. No plan is a good plan sometimes. So yeah. And I guess now, to conclude, super personal questions. How are you finding Europe, coming from New
Well,
Zealand?
I've only been here for like a month. I mean, for like a week. So I'm still pretty fresh, but that's great. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, good, good. Well, now you made me want to go to New Zealand. So, but of course, COVID restrictions and stuff. So, hopefully we'll be able to take international flights again and explore the world and all the beauties that are in there. But yeah, Rosie, thank you so much. That was a very short but a beautiful session. And yeah, I'm sure that that was very informative for our audience. And yeah, we hear Axel saying Geneva is incredible for international opportunities, but so boring as a young person. Oh, come on, it's not that boring, but yeah, maybe New Zealand is not so boring. We will see. We will find that out. But yeah, I guess thanks everyone for dedicating time on this Sunday to listening to us. And as always, I didn't mention that at the beginning. Worry not if you didn't manage to catch us live. Those sessions are always posted on the Instagram page, of course, but also on YouTube. So whenever it's suitable for you, you can just log in and rewatch the session, ask us questions, email us as always. And yeah, I guess once again, thank you so much and have a lovely Sunday.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Rosie. Bye, everyone. Bye bye.
Talk soon. Bye.